everybody, it's Chris Sovey with HealthyConsumer.com, and this is a follow-up video to my previous one on homemade probiotics. So if you haven't watched that one, I recommend doing so first before listening to this, because I'm mostly going to be going over commonly asked questions that have been presented on the comment section, and then those that have been messaged to me privately, just to clear up some misconceptions. And so I just wanted to say before that I got into fermentation and probiotics strictly from a therapeutic healing perspective. Now, there are a lot of different ways that you can make fermented foods and fermented beverages, but I am approaching this strictly from a medicinal standpoint to be used in gut healing. So that is why I'm such a stickler about the environment that you grow the probiotics in. So that brings me to the first commonly asked question is, can we use a mason jar to produce the probiotics? And I recommend against using a mason jar. I know there are some people out there that find it acceptable, but I feel if you're trying to make a truly isolated probiotic, that it's not acceptable, because it will never be truly anaerobic unless it is canned under pressure and heat, and that would kill the beneficial flora in the probiotic. So mason jars will allow yeast and bacteria, small amounts from the environment, which may contaminate your specimen and may spoil it easier than if you have a truly sealed anaerobic environment, like the Fido jars or like the picklet jars that I mentioned in the previous video. So those would be my top recommendations. You could also do a crock, one of the Herschel crocks. Those are another option if you were going to do a large quantity. But I recommend starting with this because it's easy, it's simple, and you have the advantage of being able to see what's going on with your probiotic as it develops. And so you could see if you had a spoiled batch before, instead of in a crock, it's completely sealed off, can't see anything until it's done. So same thing with these jars though. If you have the probiotic in there, you don't want to be opening it up while it's fermenting and to check on it or anything. If you know it's spoiled and you can see it, then you can open it up and throw it out. But unless you suspect that the batch is spoiled, there's no reason to open it up before the entire fermentation is complete. So that brings me to the next question is, how long should I ferment these? I originally recommended 3 days or 7 days, somewhere around that time, but I now recommend a much longer duration after more research. And I found out that the optimal time for fermentation is at least 3 weeks, preferably 4. And this is because it allows the bacteria to go through the entire life cycle and develop the highest amount of density that it possibly can. So I recommend a minimum of 3 weeks, preferably 4, so you can get the biggest bang for your buck. And anything less than a couple weeks actually won't have the probiotic value that we're searching for here. When you ferment for that long, when you ferment for 4 weeks or more, then you have hundreds of billions of organisms in just an ounce, 1 to 2 ounces. So you can see the cost effectiveness of something like this versus buying a commercial probiotic that can be anywhere from 1 to 25 billion organisms at most. And keep in mind, like I was saying previously, that this also includes extracted nutrients from the carrots and enzymes and things that will help you to assimilate some of the bacteria into your gut flora. So one of the next questions that people were asking is, where can I get these jars? The Fido jars and the picklet jars. I've put those in the description now, so that should take care of that. How do I know if the batch is spoiled? I think the general rule of thumb is when in doubt, throw it out. So if you open it up after it's done and it smells really funny, keep in mind that these have kind of a sour smell to it. But if something just smells very rancid, or you see little string-like white or black molds growing on the top, I'd recommend just throwing it out and starting over. You're going to have failed batches, but for the most part, if you're clean and careful and you use a starter culture, then that's a great insurance policy to make sure that the lactobacillus bacteria and those subspecies are taking over as the primary ones within the probiotic. You can also use a Herschel crock, like I said, that's another option. And once you've closed it, make sure that it stays closed. We're trying to create a 2% brine solution, so depending on how much water you put in there, that's how much salt you're going to put in there respectively. So for instance, the smallest one I have here, this one has 4 cups of water, so the recipe would be 12 grams of salt. This one has 5 cups of water, so it would be 15 grams of salt. This one has 7 cups of water, so it would be 21 grams of salt. So you can see the gradient there going on up and down depending on how much water you have. That's what we want to create, because too much salt can create a very yeasty environment. Too little salt can also prevent or also have the growth of other organisms. So the salt is an awesome protective barrier against other species of bacteria as well. If you have a real concern about salt, then possibly this is not the right method for you. Although the salt is somewhat consumed by the bacteria, so the actual salt content will be less in the final product. But that being said, if you still have a concern about your cardiac health, then I would recommend maybe looking at some other options like the kefirs or other fermentation methods as well. And then one of the things that I found to simplify this a little bit is I had a couple steps with the food processor. Now I just coarsely chop it and then go straight to the S-blade if you're using a food processor. Forget the loading it in with the other one first. I think you can do it just with the S-blade. It seems to work fine. And then lastly, if you're going to continue to make this, save 1 to 2 ounces after you're done, and then put that into your next batch, because that will infuse that batch with some of the beneficial bacteria that has established itself, and then really help you to continue this process. And you should be able to do it indefinitely without even using a starter culture. So that's one of the benefits after you get this up and going. And then I think that's pretty, oh yes, and some other people were asking how much should I take. I'd recommend taking about 2 ounces for an adult. I don't really know a kid's dosage. I don't feel comfortable giving you that, and I definitely wouldn't feed it to an infant. So 2 ounces would be my recommendation. You can kind of play around with it. Start with more, start with less. The taste is kind of sour, but remember, this is mostly for medicinal purposes more than anything else. And so I think that pretty much covers everything that people have asked. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to leave something in the comments section below so everyone can see it, and I'll be happy to respond to it. Thank you very much for watching this video and supporting us at healthyconsumer.com. If you're new to our YouTube channel, please subscribe below and visit our website at www.healthyconsumer.com. Again, my name is Chris Sovey, and thank you very much for listening.